Of all the B-grade platformers I've reviewed on this channel, and believe me, that's a lot, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is easily one of the ones that stuck with me the most. Maybe it's because I grew up playing Ty 2, giving me a bit of a personal connection to it, but I think it's now more so because I really do appreciate how much love and care clearly goes into these games. Ty wasn't like the most amazing game or anything. He definitely wasn't the tough guy the marketing made him out to be, but hey, it wasn't bad. Like, it had big, sprawling levels, Banjo-Kazooie style open-world gameplay, a creative and fun moveset, but most of all, a cast of delightfully goofy characters that were just impossible not to love. They gave the old Tasmanian Tiger an HD remaster last year, bringing him on over to Switch and other modern platforms. Gave me a great reason to finally revisit the little dude. The developers even saw the video and then added in gyro aiming after I mentioned how I loved how other remasters added that, and wow, is it ever helpful. I mean, look at this. That is amazing. Like, I think it really goes to show how much they really do care about their games when they're willing to go back and, like, make even more changes once they realize that people might benefit from them. It's all about making the best version of the game as possible, not just the prettiest, and it's pretty clear to me now that is genuinely their goal here. Ty 2 Bush Rescue was the second game in the series, and as you can tell from the cover, this was the one that tried to introduce a lot of new styles of gameplay to the series. Well, I guess it was the sub-games era, as I like to call it. The late 90s and early 2000s saw a lot of platformers dipping their toes in all sorts of weird side modes, shooters, vehicle missions. Playing the original arcade game? Sometimes these were a nice change of pace and did offer a lot of new fun things to do, but other times they were that one mission that the game makes you do that you really don't want to do because you just want to be the funny purple dragon and not a literal tank. It almost seems like it'll be like the worst one of the series looking at a cover like that, but no, I actually remember Ty 2 being the best of the three. I know some people like the first one more because this one is pretty different in a few ways, but there's still a lot of reasons why this is my favorite Ty game. And lo and behold, a year later, and it's gotten the same HD treatment as the original did. Definitely an ample opportunity to finally give Bush Rescue a proper revisit, see how my views in the game may have changed a little bit, while of course going over many of the remaster's new features. Oh, and that is still such a good title screen. It looks clean as hell now, too. Oh my god. Seeing kart racing spelt with a C still throws me off, though. Like, are we racing karts, or are we racing carts? There's only one reason I ever played this mode as a kid, but I'll get into that later. So while in Ty 1 you open up to the Hubworld and then you just went in the first level, which was a linear tutorial stage, Ty 2 teaches the players the ropes through a scripted opening sequence instead. This is such a better way of doing a tutorial if you ask me, because like, why would you stop me every 2 seconds to explain something when you could just put the buttons I need on screen? Like, just give me a series of scenarios that go through all my moves at least once or twice and you're golden. That's all you need. And that's exactly what Ty 2 does. Ty and the gang are responding to an assault on Kura Wong. Boss Cass's henchmen are trying to break him out of prison, and it's an all-out war this thing opens on, dude. You got koalas on one side, frills on the other, blasting at each other with laser beams, left and right.
Don't worry about me!
Go on without me! This is amazing. Like, how can you not love this?
I'm there! You little beauty!
God, I do not know how I used to clown on this game. It's clearly meant to be tongue-in-cheek. Like, a lot of games around this time were trying so hard to be dark and cool. Like, even Sonic, I mean, they explode the frickin' moon in that game. Ty feels like it's trying to capture that sort of cheesiness, but while being in on the joke. Like, it doesn't go full ham, but you do get a lot of cuddly critters trying to act way cooler than they have any right to. And I always get a really good kick out of it.
I'm not gonna let you break Cass free!
Oh yeah? You and whose army?
I don't need an army!
So yeah, the gameplay is pretty much identical to the first game. You jump, you glide, you throw your 2 boomerangs, and of course you got that bite move, which gives you a good 1, 2, 3. There's also a brand new grinding move. Yeah, looks like Ty's been taking some notes. It's one of those magnetic grinds that automatically propels you forward. There's no balancing required, but you are able to build speed and jump off whenever you want. Not as good as SA2's grind, that's for sure, but I definitely prefer this over like a Ratchet and Clank style grinding, or the way modern Sonic does it. I just hate it when grinding is boiled down to a magnetic dodging minigame. I feel like I've done this 7,000 times at this point. You even do it once here, too! I really wish the game got more out of this mechanic. There's a couple of really cool moments where you like jump off and get somewhere, but it's used very sparingly. But probably the biggest addition to Tai 2 are the battle bunyips. Yeah, one of the many new ideas we saw on the cover. There are these big mech suits that you can temporarily pilot. The first one you see is mostly just for punching things, but you'll later pilot ones equipped for different scenarios as well. I don't really mind these that much, actually. Like, usually when they stick you in a mech thing for a level, it's like, oh great, this annoying part. But no, I feel like this plays close enough to the main game to prevent it from feeling like this whole other thing you have to do. You're still jumping and hovering and knocking guys away. You're just doing it in a slightly different way for a few moments every now and then, so it ends up feeling like a brief change of pace instead of a rough hurdle. The way this thing punches is like really fun too. It's like like you ever play with like these bionicles, like, you know, the ones where you pull the yeah like that. Like every punch feels just like that. The weight behind each blow, like just the way it handles and everything, it feels really good, I have to admit. Oh yeah, this game has turret segments too. They are brief though, and few and far in between, thankfully. I only remember 2 of them in the entire game, the second one simply being a moment in a boss fight, which is more than excusable. Those rockets you're firing also have bullet drops, so it is a little bit more interesting than just like clicking on their heads. You are at least thinking about the movement on the projectile, at least a little bit. God, why do you scare me like that, dude? Like, you see a turret segment this early into the game, you start getting ideas, but no, it's like fine. Before long, we bump into Fluffy, Boss Cass's top banana. She's kind of like the female spy character, you know, the one that's like always playing with the hero's heart or whatever, except like if every exchange was just cheesy nonsense instead.
Well, look who's here! It's number 1 on the least wanted list.
That's rich, coming from number 1 on the annoying rat list.
After Ty fails to stop Fluffy from busting Cass out, Ty and company decide to create Bush Rescue, an organization dedicated to saving people, mostly as an excuse to stop Cass again, but also because it's just generally a swell idea. The people in these parts aren't the brightest. And then they have this absolutely ridiculous explanation as to why you can't just go arrest Boss Cass.
I've just got word that Cass has set up his own country just so he can have diplomatic immunity.
You mean it's an immunity community?
Immunity community, oh my god. He sets up his own country. You can't arrest me, I got my own laws, I got diplomatic immunity. Like, why would any government respect that? Oh, then again, I guess it worked for Big Boss, so may as well work for Big Boss Cass. Bush Rescue HQ and the neighboring town of Boomerangs sort of serve as the game's hub world this time. There isn't like an actual hub that leads to each individual level anymore. This one's got more of like an open world structure, but this is still the central area that you always start in and return to, so I'm just gonna still call it the hub world. And like any good hub world, it is littered with goodies to collect and secrets to find. But there's also missions to complete, these NPCs you can talk to, and a couple of shops you can buy new equipment.
Let me know if you see anything you like.
I've always had really fond memories of Boomerangs, and holy crap, dude, after playing it front to back again after all these years, I can easily say, this is one of my all-time favorite hub worlds in any platformer, dude. It is that good. And I think it's the sense of community that it conveys so well, you know? Like, this doesn't just feel like a hub world, no. This is Boomerangs, man. You're just walking around here, and everybody says hello as they walk by.
Good day, young Ty. Good day, Ty.
Hello there, Ty.
It's a small town where I guess like everybody kind of knows who you are, right? So you get a lot of nice hellos. And some other dialogue too.
This is so humiliating and hot.
What is this guy? He's so miserable. There's certainly some characters here, that's for sure.
I am liking the learning of English.
I really love how a lot of this town like kind of tells a story, you know, like this car that crashed into somebody's fence, and you got all the workers being like, really, no idea what to do here. And then down the street, you got like the shittiest playground ever made, where Lenny the Lyrebird is preaching his stupid conspiracies to the children of Boomerangs.
They use electricity to see underwater. The color red is heavier than the color yellow. And you know what else? I have no idea where I am right now.
If they ever make Ty 5, I really hope they give him like a pirate radio station or something.
I'm actually a genius!
So aside from the way better hub world, one of the other changes you'll definitely notice right away in Tai 2 is that opals are now instead used as a currency. So in the first game you had to collect all 300 in a stage to get one of the thunder eggs, and it's like the one mission everyone skips in most levels because, you know, like who wants to spend 20 minutes running around in circles looking for the last 2? Nobody likes a needle in a haystack. It's like getting 100 coins for a star, except there's only 100 coins, so it's even more annoying. This is a really good change because now there's not only a great new incentive to try and get as many opals as you can, but now we can also totally avoid those situations entirely. Alrighty, why don't we buy some rangs? Oh, I guess Ty's folks settled down and opened up a store after we rescued them in the first game. Here you can buy a wide selection of new boomerangs, each with their own unique abilities. You got the returning elemental rangs, fire, ice, and electricity. And there's some brand new ones too, like the Lasherang and the Smasherang. My favorite boomerangs are always the ones that let you interact with the environment in cool ways, like lighting fires with the Flamerang, or making frozen platforms in the water with the Frosty Rang. But while you will get a lot of mileage out of the Lasherang, Smasherang, and Infarang in that regard, they barely make use of these three this time. I can only think of a handful of times where I needed the Frosty Rang. You can use it to cool down these hot platforms, which is pretty cool, but the Flamerang? I can only think of a single time I needed it, to burn these webs right here. Other than that, I can only think of like these frozen blocks that have opals inside, but like that's just money. It respawns. You can get that anywhere. Same deal for the Zappy Rang. You can power this generator here at Bush Rescue HQ to get up here to get these opals, but outside of that, I don't remember finding a single place I could use this thing. Well, at least the Lasherang's pretty fun to use. A solid grappling move is always welcome in my books. I also love how you get two of them, so you can grapple continuously, Spider-Man style. You can also try to swing back and forth, pick up momentum, and then leap off, trying to get as far as you can with the glide move. I love moves that feel like an extension of your previous move. Increasing the amount of movement options you have once you're airborne, it goes a long way. And if you're going a long way, you're going to be riding in that four-wheeler. Extending past the town of Buramudgee exits into the greater world of Southern Rivers, which you'll explore by trucking around. This is where it becomes pretty obvious that Ty 2 is structured very differently from the first game. I suppose the idea was to create one massive world instead of several large maps, but they do it in like the Wind Waker kind of way, where it's like, yeah, like I guess that's a big sprawling map, but it's really just a series of smaller maps interconnected by vehicle travel. And the driving, well, it's fun enough. Like there's bike and frills and crates full of opals to occupy as you make your way to the next stop, both of which you'll be blasting away at with your inexplicably exploding boomerangs. You're gonna be blowing everything to smithereens. Except the sheep, apparently. These guys are invincible. These mud patches used to be the bane of my existence, dude. They would bring it right down to a crawl. Every time you hit one, it's like, oh great. This is something they changed. In the HD version, they don't slow you down at all anymore. These serve to no purpose other than just like needlessly making the journey between areas take longer. Getting rid of this was a great idea. The pacing is much faster, and the driving's way more fun for it.
Woo! It's coming out, boy!
And spending less time on the road means you spend more time in the actual missions. Being a member of Bush Rescue, Ty will occasionally receive a distress call from Maurie, the pigeon in charge.
The whole place is gonna blow unless you do something.
That's not a pigeon, you cockhead. He's a cockatoo. Man, take it from a real Tassie tiger. You don't know a damn thing about the land down under, cobber.
I don't know, I'm from Nova Scotia. We got like muskrats and loons and moose and shit. I don't know, like I know like wallabies and kangaroos and like that's
I don't want to hear about your problems. I mean, did you seriously think that Boss Cass was an ostrich?
Is Boss Cass not an ostrich?
Fair dinkum.
Is he really not an ostrich?
Listen, you drongo. His name is Boss Cass. He's a cassowary.
Oh.
And they're real nasty buggers too, so you'd better watch yourself.
I'm sorry.
These bloody tourists. Crocodile bait. That's all they're good for.
Okay, Maurie the Cockatoo will give you missions, and those will be marked on your map for you to go out and find. Many of these missions are simply platforming stages, similar to Tai 1's levels, though many of these ones are a little bit more linear. Like, Tai 1's levels had a linear through line you could run through once to familiarize yourself with the world before going wild, but a lot of these feel a lot more hallway-like. So, Tai 2's areas have a lot less objectives than Tai 1's. These are more like straightforward obstacle courses with maybe one or two goals at the end or throughout, instead of like a big open level full of stuff to do. But many of these maps will still open up in a lot of areas, and will offer a variety of thrills to fight, buttons to bash, platforms to platform, and all sorts of obstacles that are an absolute joy to navigate. One area I really loved was this treehouse looking level, Frillneck Forest. There's tons of bridges connecting the trees, and there's this big boingy net down there to catch you if you fall. You'll run back to the nearest ladder you kick down to get back up, all the while dodging ninja stars from ninja geckos. You can also once again expect a very high number of nooks and crannies that hide collectibles throughout each level, giving you plenty reason to keep an eye out for anything you can use your boomerangs on. Now, my two favorite levels are easily the Never Never and Sulfur Rocks, and it's because they greatly deviate from that linear design of other levels. They really sprinkle tons of objectives and little side challenges all over the place. Just being surrounded by tons to do and having the freedom to kind of pick away at anything I feel like, this right here is when TIE 2 is at its absolute best. You can also find some of those Bunyips laying around in some areas. Now, the battle Bunyip is usually just optional, since you only use it to take out enemies, right? So if you have a strong enough boomerang, you can usually just use that instead. But some missions will require the unique abilities of the other Bunyips, and these ones can be hit and miss. Really not huge on the lifter Bunyip, it's really freaking slow, and you only use it for moving around big rocks. It's more tedious than fun, if you ask me. But on the other hand, we have the Thermo Bunyip, dude. Let me tell you about this thing, man. It's this badass firefighting mech suit. It's got water cannons and a heat-resistant body that lets you swim in lava. I really love the way these things feel. The animation really sells it, like the way you see the joints and arms move and bend. There's a very believable sense of weight here, like the way it has to lean forward and uses propellers to push itself, and the way you're able to combine the melee attack with the water cannon to do the spin attack. It's just so cool, dude. Like, the other Bunyips are whatever. Like, I get that it's fun to empower the player for a few moments and just plow through some enemies. That's always fun and all, but I would argue this one affects the gameplay in a way more meaningful way. It is just such a cool thing to hop in and out of as you need it, and the moveset is geared towards puzzle solving and navigating the environment in new and different ways. This thing can do things TIE can't, but TIE can also do things it can't. It's not just about giving you a different way to attack. It's about giving you a legitimate reason to bounce between two different movesets so you can fully explore the environment around you. And if you ask me, when it comes to platformers, that is the absolute best way you could use a device like this. Now, that's the vehicle mission stuff at its best. Here's the vehicle mission stuff when it's at its worst. The submarine Bunyip. Yeah, it's just like a sub-game where you... sub-game, shut up. It's like a sub-game where you go around and try to get all the things, and it's like, I don't know, it's okay. But okay becomes annoying as hell once it's the 6th time you're doing it. And yes, you're looking at helicopter missions on screen, but I'm including those too because they're really the same thing. No, really, like they control and play identically. It's really just a reskin. And hey, I really do appreciate them finding a lot of ways to make these play differently. One's a linear obstacle course, you're trying to get a payload to the end. One has you pulling water from a lake to douse forest fires. This one has you picking up and placing pieces of construction. Like, the missions do feel different enough, and I applaud them for thinking of enough scenarios that let them do that. But at the end of the day, I don't think we needed to be doing this, at least not this many times. I know they wanted to explore more ways an Australian rescue team could help people, so yeah, what is going on makes sense with that context, but if I'm going to do a mission surrounding putting out bushfires, I'd rather be playing as TIE on foot. In fact, there is a mission where you do that, and I liked it a lot more.
Good on you, mate. You saved Gunna Gunna.
What do you mean I saved Gunna Gunna? It's still on fire. TIE 2 easily works the best when you're exploring the environment and using whatever equipment you have to find as much stuff as you can, and that feeds into this really good gameplay loop. Completing missions and exploring rewards you with opals, which you bring back to Boomerangs to buy new gear with, and that unlocks even more areas, and it just cycles from there. Being able to buy the Boomerangs and Bunyip licenses in any order you want is a really big part of what makes this game feel so open and free, despite the game having more linear level design, because you're going to notice a lot of things you can't do yet, so your purchases will likely be based off of whatever missions and areas you want to tackle first. It won't be too long before you have most of the Boomerangs, so later in the game, you'll begin to bring your opals to Sly instead.
I just got some great new rang upgrades in this week.
If you climb all the way up to Sly's big-ass treehouse that he has for some reason, he'll upgrade your Boomerangs for an additional fee. The Flamerang becomes the Lava-rang, the Frosty-rang becomes the Freezer-rang, and so on and so forth. The upgraded Elemental rangs all have splash damage, so they're really good for taking out multiple enemies at once, and they also do a ton of more damage, so those Uber Frills that used to be invincible, you'll now be able to take one of those out with these things. But like, as far as I know, that is the only thing these Boomerangs are for. How come there's no like frozen cave I need a stronger fire boomerang to melt open? And why not need more electricity to power bigger generators? The Freezer-rang could have easily made frozen platforms and lava, that would have been a good upgrade over the original, but no, just like the base forms, these don't do anything like that at all. And because they're only good for taking out these stronger enemies, all 3 pretty much become obsolete the moment you get a stronger boomerang. Like the Kaboomerang. Like, why would I use any of these 3 when I could do this instead? This was my favorite one of the first game. You throw them both at once, watch them collide, and hell yeah. It's a pretty clever way of keeping that move from being OP as well, you know, throwing both together. It's 2 birds, 1 stone. You get a sick-ass animation, and you keep the player from spamming it. Though I guess there is the Deadly Rang, a version of it you can spam. It's a really pricey endgame weapon, but oh my god, when you get these things... You're not gonna have these ones for a long time, so one of my favorite earlier game upgrades is the Multi-Rang. It doesn't light dudes on fire, freeze them, or grind their bones in the dust or nothing, but holy crap, can you throw a lot of these? You're gonna be giving those poor frills a pelting, and the sounds as you knock these guys back like a mile, it is so much fun. Some upgrades are less combat focused, like the Inferang's upgrade, the X-Rang. This one lets you see invisible objects without entering that first person view, or the Lasherang's upgrade, the Warparang. This one lets you grapple on these, whatever these are. This would have looked a lot cooler if they did an actual warping effect, but no, you just kind of like grapple to them and go through a wall. It looks kind of weird. Most of these sorts of obstacles will hide one of the game's many collectibles, and there are a lot of them. We've got chromium orbs, which you can use to buy maps, helping you find the other collectibles, but most of the others don't really serve any purpose other than just contributing to 100% completion, which feels kinda cheap, because in the first game, rescuing the Bilbies gave you a Thunder Egg, which opened new levels, and the cogs were used to buy new Boomerangs. Both of those things got you something in return. But since Tai 2's progression is affected by completing missions and not by how many collectibles you have, these collectibles have far less value. The only thing they do is unlock a hidden ending if you get everything. And that's so weird, right? Because I really think combing through each level and using all your equipment you worked for to find every little secret and collectible, that's the sort of thing I'm remembering when I fondly think of Tai 2, but that makes the most fun part of the game something oddly optional. A lot of these missions are just driving fetch quests, like why do these advance the story forward? Oh, and let's not forget those 25 spies you gotta find. Yeah, you know, the one where everyone had 0 out of 25 on their completed save because nobody knew how to activate this mission. So, super early on in the game, there's this mission in Buramudji where you have to take out a spy, and you gotta use the Inferang to see through its disguise, and then you take it out. You know, it's just like a way to show you the fact that there's a bunch of spies out there in the world so you know what to do and you know how to look for them, right? But the problem is, when you finish the mission, it still doesn't activate the spies. This game has these enemies completely deactivated until you come here and talk to Ranger Ken afterwards, which I've read is something a lot of people missed. Kid, me included. I never knew how to get these as a kid. They should have had a bounce off of just the one mission, instead of making you complete an easily missable follow-up mission. And I know this is something that they've taken steps to improve before, you know, doing a better job of marking it on the map and all that, but it's still pretty missable. Honestly, if you ask me, I think making something that spawns in an entire aspect of the game missable to begin with, I think that's just an inherently bad design choice from the start. If I did this, I would have made that first side mission a main mission so nobody misses it, and I would have either made Ranger Ken's part of that main mission, having you just like walk down the street, or I would have just removed it entirely. But headaches aside, I do really like this idea for a collectible. Like, it is so fun knowing that every time you see a group of koalas, there's a good chance there's one clown here who needs to die. Now, it's probably the most annoying collectible is the concept art. Firstly, it's kind of annoying that you even need all the concept art to get 100%, but it's more so because A, they're really small, and B, there's a lot of them, so it's really easy to miss 1 or 2 in each level, creating those needle in a haystack scenarios. Though it's still not as bad as Tai 1's Opal Collecting. These levels are a lot smaller, which means it takes less time to look for them, but most of them are also in these invisible crates, which sounds like a bad thing, but that actually makes a lot of them pretty easy to scope out with the X-Rang or Inferang. The last thing you gotta find is Gooboo Steve. He's this weird guy you can find hidden in 10 different locations. Every time you find him, he gives you a crap ton of opals, and some extremely good dialogue.
Something smells in here. I think it's you. You should go now.
A fun fact, this character is actually the director's sort of self-insert character, Steve Stamatiadis. Hopefully I said that right. He's also the lead art director in the series, being the man behind the character design. I still think Ty is a really good design. It is just so perfectly reminiscent of early 2000s mascots, while having a really bold and unique look that helped it stand out, and the Boomerangs really helped make the silhouette super recognizable too.
I've got so many comments over the years from people saying like Ty's mouth scares them. Like, ah, he's got 2 mouths, what the heck? I always thought the implication was that Ty's mouth goes underneath his muzzle. It's just like visual trickery to imply it a certain way. And it's not like you can see both sides at once, so in my eyes the illusion works, just the same that Sonic's mouth switching sides depending on the angle does.
And while Goo Steve did the art, his brother George did all the music, and Ty 2's soundtrack is an absolute delight. It leans more heavily into the chill acoustic vibes that Ty 1 had sometimes, and they really did a fantastic job. From the upbeat truckin' tunes, to the playful and energetic guitar strings, to the comfy twang of Burramudgee. With, of course, a healthy dose of didgeridoos to keep the sound as Australian as possible, it is still, to this day, one of my favorite platformer soundtracks of all time. Hell, this is still one of my favorite platformers of all time. Who am I kidding? I adore this game, dude. I don't even think every new thing they try really works, but a lot of it does. And while it is a little disappointing that they don't really get the most out of every type of boomerang, they do enough with the new ones to keep the game fresh and fun. And again, the game more than makes up for those inconsistencies with just how damn charming it is. The silly exchanges, the amazing world design, and a hub world that you can truly call home. It's not as good as most of the big names in the platformer world, but god damn it, it's got just as much heart, and that is something this game proudly wears on its sleeve. Okay, so I got all the boomerangs, got all the collectibles. How's about we finish this thing up? The final mission has you taking the fight to Boss Cass, and he's been spending the entire game kidnapping mammals and transferring their warm-blooded abilities into his frill soldiers, creating genetically enhanced super frills, using the help of Julius's apparently evil Uncle Carlos. So to prepare for the fight, Ty and the gang unveil their most badass and powerful bunyips.
Is that a shadow bunyip?
Sounds like you've got bunyip envy, Sly.
Aw, it's fun. You got a little bit of sibling rivalry going on. This final mission seems a lot more interested in empowering the player than it is in challenging the player. I kind of prefer when the last level is like one big final challenge that tests everything you learn throughout the game. But I guess Ty 2's idea of a final level is putting you in the strongest mech ever made and pitting you against an army. He got fists of steel and mega lasers out the ass. Yeah, I definitely would have preferred something a lot more challenging, but it's still good mindless fun. And it doesn't overstay its welcome either. Refighting the bosses in this thing and absolutely decimating them this time is a pretty fun feeling. A little hot gamer tip for you. There's a really fast way you can grind for opals in this area. Hit these 5 switches, go up through this way, and grab that bag. That's 10k right there. Quit out, rinse and repeat. The final fight with Cass is kind of pathetic. He's so easy it's impossible to lose. Though I do really love how his final phase is just him running around like a loser after you broke all his shit. Though I do think the gag would have landed a little bit better if it followed a fight that was actually kind of challenging. Cass goes back to prison, Carlos is like, lol, and the cast is rewarded for their brave efforts.
So, final verdict, still good, baby. Yeah, Ty 2 is still a hell of a time if you ask me, and it's really interesting to me too now, seeing how its strengths and weaknesses are so different from the first games, but, you know, I guess it makes sense, they are pretty different. But yeah, I would absolutely recommend it, especially if you like the first one. Just know that even if the levels aren't as open, the gameplay still feels open because of how much control you have over what you want to do.
It's a fantastic remaster of an already solid game. Their work on this thing has been really something, man. The new life they breathe into every area, the lighting and fog, and the way the color all pops so much now, it is stunning, really. Some of these side-by-sides really blew me away. And the load times, oh my god, they are so much faster, dude. Like those doors that would stop you on your way to Burramudgee, you can't even get stopped by them now. The area loads before you can even get to them. Oh right, they also made the cogs actually do something in the HD version. These can now be used to buy cosmetics, which, if you ask me, this is always a great reward. That is something that is actually going to make me want to get these things. This is actually one of the changes they made back in the 2017 Steam version, which similarly improved the graphics and added quality of life improvements. This is where the faster mud driving also came from. Oh yeah, the totals for level screens also. Dude, in the original, you could only see your totals. Total! You could not see what you did and did not have in each level specifically. Yeah, like imagine trying to 100% a platformer without a screen like this to point you in the right direction. A nightmare. Luckily though, back back when they were updating the PC version, they listened to fan feedback and introduced a screen similar to what Tai 1 had. Thank God too, because it makes 100%ing this game a much smoother experience. I thought the Switch version improved the graphics even further, but going back to the PC version, it really just felt like I was looking at the same thing again, except at 60 FPS. Okay, looking back and forth, I guess there are some subtle changes with the Switch version, but it's mostly just like little effects, like the scope on the infrarang and the tweaked lava animation, stuff like that. But let's get real, if you're buying it on Switch, you're buying it for the portability and the gyro controls. The PC version's better for people looking to get a higher frame rate and better draw distances, and don't really care that much about the conveniences the Switch can bring. Though the Switch version does have some unique features, like the brand new Boomerang. Yeah, this thing lets you enter a photo mode. It's not as robust as many of the other photo modes I've used. I kinda wish I had more control over the camera's position, but hey, even still, this is a great feature. The Tai universe is a perfect fit for taking goofy screenshots. What else do they add here? New hardcore mode. You get 1 life. What? Okay, if you want to turn Tai 2 into the Evil Within 2, you could do that now, apparently. The remaster is available on Nintendo Switch for $40 Canadian, which is a $30 American, and that will be available on PS4 down the road too. Yeah, slightly pricey again. I think that's a little bit much for Tai 2, especially since the PC version is much cheaper, even if it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that this one does. I think knocked down around $10 would have been perfect, but I don't know, I guess how much you spend on something's up to you, huh? You can't always wait for it to go on sale, I guess. Oh, right, I still have to talk about the kart racing mode. Okay, so, yeah, throughout the game, you're able to do these optional racing missions, and they only serve 2 purposes. You get a cash reward, and you have to do them all to get 100%. They're okay. It's not the worst racing I've ever played, but definitely far from the best. You've got items, you can knock out other players. When you get knocked out, it's really clunky, oh my god. But I do like how the drifting feels. It's all about keeping your kart facing the way you want to go, and being able to go on the rails is kind of cool, too. You can find some shortcuts and stuff. I guess it can be a somewhat fun distraction if you want to earn some extra opals, but I don't know, it kind of just ends up adding to the pile of random other stuff you have to do to get 100%. Luckily though, you don't have to even step foot in one of these places if you just want to finish the game. They're also not that hard either, so if you say them all to the end, it'll take you like, I don't know, 20 minutes to get through them all. Does make for a decent 2-player mode though. God, I played so much of this as a kid, and it is literally just because it was my friend's only 2-player game. Well, that, and you could also play as Sai. I just really wanted to play as Sai, dude. Like, I loved Metal Sonic so much as a kid, right? So you can throw something like this in front of 8-year-old me, and hell yeah, I'm gonna play an entire mode I don't really like. I can be the Robot Man. This character has some pretty cool trivia behind him, actually. 100%ing the first game got you this hidden ending where they tease the character, you know, like sort of implying, oh, that'll be a villain in the next game, but they never use him at all in Tai 2. He's just like a random enemy in a few missions, and then there's another version of him that just walks around Burramudgee as an NPC.
Greetings, Tai unit.
I guess they thought they should probably do like a proper cliffhanger this time, because the 100% ending in Tai 2 actually does tease the 3rd game. Skip here if you don't want to see it. I don't know, spoilers. Maybe you want to save the scene for 100%ing it yourself. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, yeah, here we go. Tai and Shazza are working on the 4B in the garage when the Bunyip Elder comes in and warns them both of a new danger.
Come with me.
The Bunyip Elder brings them both to another land where their new shadowy foes reveal themselves. Ah, the Quinkin, man. That makes me so curious about them remastering Tai 3 now, because, like, there is so much I hate about this game, and it makes me wonder how much they really are going to be able to improve it. But if I had to take a stab at it, I would start by making the kart racing missions optional, just like in Tai 2. I think just needing them for 100%, that's all they really should be. But you'd also have to really tone down how tedious the combat is, because it just, I don't know, it didn't really make much sense to me to go up to enemies and mash a button to, like, tediously punch them over and over in a game I bought to jump around and throw boomerangs. So maybe rework the combat to be focused around that custom boomerang system that didn't really get used that much. Make it about that. Make it about thinking about what elements you have to put on your boomerangs to take out certain enemies. I think that would be a lot more focused on what Tai was originally about, and I think it would be a little bit more fun than just mashing buttons to kill guys. But even if they did do all of that, that would still leave all of those vehicle missions that I just don't want to do, and I don't really see them taking those out either.
Except Crabmersible, that's like the best part of the game and that should stay in there. But I mean, either way, like as much as I don't like this thing, it's still all about making the best version of each game as possible, and with how much they seem to be doing really good on that so far, I think a Tie 3 remaster could potentially be the most interesting of the three. So I'm excited to tackle my old foe once more. If they give this thing a remaster too, you can bet your ass they're gonna be standing right here and talking about this once more. So yeah, the present has been very good to Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. Let's hope the future is too.
You don't know a damn thing about land. Fuck.
Big ass shout out to Square Eyed Jack for doing that bit earlier in the video. I thought that was like a really funny way to maybe correct my animal ignorance. Yeah, the dude's channel is criminally underrated, so if you're itching for more of like kind of what I do, platformers and stuff, his channel is definitely one you should check out.